Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Costain. Research by Human Behaviour Change for Life into the business case for a trade in meat rather than a trade in live animals has showed that exporting livestock is more than twice as expensive and nearly 6 times as carbon intensive as transporting carcasses. Jo White is a co-founder of Human Behaviour Change for Life. I asked her why this research is important.
Well, this research is really exciting because effectively what it's doing is closing the gaps. So when we started on this journey, we were quite surprised to see that there was a void of evidence in this particular area. There have been a certain number of papers and research undertaken that's looked at transport and the trade live animals compared to carcass trade within the EU, but there is a gap in looking beyond that. So what we've undertaken is a piece of research that looks at the trade between the European Union and third countries. So through undertaking that, it's a very complex system. It's involving lots and lots of different stakeholders, and as a result we've had to take a very innovative approach. So I suppose the importance of this research is it pulls together both the economic, the environmental, but also the social impact of the trade. And it really shines a spotlight on the opportunities and the benefits, as well as some of the challenges of that change. But we feel it's kind of a really good starting place, of foundation for the sector to explore kind of the opportunities that are available to them.
Just to put this in context, are we talking about thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of animals over the course of the average year?
We are talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. And when we're looking at the global sector, we are then talking about millions of animals. So from a perspective, this project, this work that we've undertaken has enormous potential to have rollout and impact from a global perspective. Because in essence, the approach that we've taken could be applicable globally in terms of this trade, because it is something that's going on a global basis.
And of course, I should say that although the numbers themselves are high, what we're really focused on here is the individual experience of each sentient creature. Thanks, Jo. So what did you discover? What are the benefits of a trade in meat versus a trade in livestock?
Well, I think there's a number of benefits, and we've looked at this through looking at it from a business case. So we've looked at the economics. So from if we take that first of all, we've shown that it's around 2.5 times more costly to transport live animals as in comparison to the carcass trade. We've also explored the environmental impact, which is obviously very salient in the current situation on the planet, regarding how the trade is impacting upon the environment, climate change. So, for example, we've shown that there's 6 times more carbon dioxide emissions with the live trade in comparison to the carcass trade. We would just highlight that obviously with the carcass trade, you've got other factors such as refrigeration to take into account. But when you look at the opportunities around more of an efficient trade, so by the nature of a carcass trade, you can transport more carcasses than you can transport live animals, it starts to show that sort of a cost efficiency. Yeah. When we start to look at the social gain, there are a number of areas from a point of view of employment, but also, again, thinking about some of the sort of things that have been present in recent times around issues to do with health and spread of disease. This actually taking an approach from a carcass trade is massively advantageous because you're looking at reducing the risks around health and disease. While this report didn't look specifically at the animal welfare benefits, there is compelling evidence around shortening those journey times from a point of view of a massive reduction and an improvement in animal welfare as well. So there are many benefits across this that the researchers managed to highlight.
Now, your report talks about advanced modelling. What was special about the research methodology?
With this research, we took very much a systems-based approach. So we looked at the situation from a global perspective, but also honed in and undertook case examples. So we looked at a specific case of movement from an EU country. So we looked at Portugal, and we also looked at Portugal to transporting sheep to Israel. So we focused in on a particular case example. I'd just like to mention that this research was undertaken before the recent conflict. So we have got a snapshot in a moment of time. Regarding the approach that we took, we used econometric modelling. So I wouldn't claim to be an expert in this field, but we are fortunate in the team at Human Behaviour Change for Life that we've got a couple of econometric wizards who basically took some work that had been undertaken by Wageningen University in the Netherlands, where they modelled the situation within the EU, but then took it the next stage further. So we were looking at a case example where it involved road transport, but it also involved transport of animals by sea. So we were doing that comparison, collecting the data through varying different sources, interviews, through the literature that's available, and then developing and designing this economic model that could look at the costs, but also the environmental impact. And it's through that modelling that we've been able to sort of highlight these benefits that are available to the sector.
Now, you mentioned earlier the benefits in terms of health and reduced risk of disease transmission, the economic and environmental benefits. So the industry, you'd have thought, would welcome this with open arms. How are you expecting the report to be received by those in the livestock sector?
Well, I think because it is a piece of groundbreaking research in the sense that it's pulling together lots of different elements, and it's taking that, as I mentioned, a very systems-based approach. So we're hoping that the industry sees the opportunity here, because it has highlighted a number of opportunities, a number of benefits, whether it be cost savings, whether it being able to look at their policies around how they move to being more carbon neutral, reducing their emissions, but also on the social side. So it is the opportunity for the sector to become closer in alignment with public opinion. So we only have to think about what's happening here in the UK. And in the recent King's speech around looking to end the live export from the UK, that there is that social and public opinion around wanting to see a carcass-only trade. So it is an opportunity that could save money. It could help with profit margins in an economic time when that's particularly important, but also add in environmental benefit and have that alignment with social opinion.
Now, the focus of the report is human behaviour change. So when the social and economic and environmental costs of live export are so high, why does the practice continue?
I suppose from our perspective, we see that there have been a number of improvements over the years. I mean, it's an issue that I've been personally working on for a couple of decades now. And I've seen a number of improvements in terms of certain elements of the trade. And again, going back to the example of what's happening here in the UK, there's certainly an appetite for change, and there's an appetite for a shift in approach. But there's still, as you say, a lot more to do. And from a human behavioural science perspective, we see that this is an area that could help the trade enormously from a point of view of looking at how to deliver that change. And it has to be something that's done as a joined up approach of co-creation, because there's an enormous amount of expertise within the sector that needs to be engaged. So it's about enabling those conversations, that dialogue, to pull upon those expertise, but also having support right across the board. So ensuring that the farmers have got a voice, but also engaging with consumer and the retail. And I think key to this is the support and backing of policymakers and politicians. And this is particularly important at a time when within the EU, the transport regulation is being looked at. So there's never been really a better time to sort of have this dialogue and start kind of building on this opportunity.
And just finally, Eurogroup for Animals commissioned the report. Do you know what they plan to do next to try and change the behaviour of livestock exporters?
I think it's really building on that dialogue. I mean, we as an organisation are separate from Eurogroup. So Human Behaviour Change for Life undertook this research on behalf of Eurogroup, but Eurogroup are working at the moment to sort of build those relationships and have that dialogue. And obviously at an important time, as I've mentioned, about the transport regulation being explored, because it's got to be something that's done in partnership. And there's clearly from this research, clearly opportunities to have a win-win for all parties involved. So I think from this perspective of Eurogroup, it's about how they can build upon that. And we feel that they've taken a very innovative and forward-thinking approach by commissioning this research in the first place. So it's embarking on that dialogue between the sector and NGOs such as Eurogroup, which will help pave the way for change.
That was Joe White from Human Behaviour Change for Life. More news on our website, 8.9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.